Hey guys, welcome back to Teen Muscle Radio and episode number 45. So today we are joined by Mark Claxton, and Mark is a DFAC pro, and that's the pro federation that comes out of essentially doing the hardest thing that you can potentially do, in my opinion, in British natural bodybuilding, which is winning the overall title at the BNBF British Finals, which is not by any means a cookie cutter or plastic pro card. It's a pro card that you have to work your arse off for. And for me, Mark has been someone that I've looked up to for a long period of time. Like ever since I got into the sport, I'm pretty sure, and I was thinking about this in the car on the way back from the cardio this morning. I was like, when I first see Mark's physique? And I think it was potentially at either the 2014 or 2015 British Pro Grand Prix. It was one of the two, and I'm sure Mark can clear up which one it potentially was.
That's probably the 14.
Probably the 14. So yeah. That was the one that I thought it was. And the reason why I thought it was that is because when I was in 2014, that was my first year in natural bodybuilding, and before then I'd only had an experience of watching the non-tested shows, and luckily I got guidance enough to come into a natural federation and do my first show with the BNBF. And I remember going to the finals because I was lucky enough to be invited as a teen, and seeing the lineup there was just blew me away at what you could potentially achieve. And I think what I'm going to try and do is either in the background of this podcast or in the thumbnail at least, I'll put or a picture that I found yesterday of Mark competing as a junior versus what he competes at now. And if you're a young guy and looking at those sort of pictures, like you'd have to be blind not to be motivated by that. So yeah, like I said, to not blab on too much, Mark has been someone that I've definitely looked up to in the sport for a long period of time, and I'm very much honoured to be joined by him for this episode. So Mark, for the listeners that don't know you, that don't know Mark Claxton, who are you, and how did you get into the sport, and what do you do for a living on a day-to-day basis? Just give us a bit of a background on yourself.
Okay, first of all, thanks for the compliments. Mm-hmm. I'm a natural bodybuilder, just recreationally, I suppose. It's never going to be a profession that you're going to earn any money out of.
Sure.
I've never been involved in the fitness industry for a living. Obviously, I've helped people here and there over the years to varying degrees of success and catastrophic failure, which is what it's all about when when you're learning, when you first start and you do a show or two, and then you start helping friends and you think, oh, I'll help them get into shape, and then things go south for them, and you're like, shit, what did I do wrong there? And then you just keep learning from there. But yeah. Originally, I had a factory job. I used to make UPVC windows and stuff when I first left school, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left school.
Okay.
Then I did an electrical engineering apprenticeship. I became an electrical installation engineer, if you like. Okay. So I worked on building sites, industrial, commercial, domestic, all sorts of different stuff. But never really, my heart was never in it or anything like that. I still didn't really know what to do, but it was a trade and something I could always fall back on should I need to. So that was what I did. I got into bodybuilding during that time. I started training when I was 15 years old. Wow. I don't do electrical engineering anymore. I just sort of, the recession hit and I was having to work away and stuff like that. And being away from home and, for bodybuilding lifestyle at the time, I didn't really see it as conducive to living my life the way I wanted to live it. So
sure.
I didn't want to work away anymore. There was no work locally. And then even the work that you were getting, you were working for friends and stuff. And if anyone was having cash flow problems, then them paying you, it's a difficult situation to be in, because people who you're friends with are your employers and they owe you money. And to me, that's as good as stealing. If a friend stole from you, you're not going to feel great about that. So it was time to move on out of that. I had some friends who worked in the prison service, and that sounded like something I could do. So that's what I've been doing ever since. So yeah.
amazing. Well, I can imagine that the potentially before the prison service, the job that you were doing was quite sort of manually intensive. Like, were you on your feet a lot, and did you find that sort of hindered your training a little bit at all?
Yeah, it was very manual. Like, it was up and down. Some days it was more manual than others.
Yeah.
But yeah, on occasion, I think it did really hinder my training. But one thing I notice now, looking back, is because I was that much smaller, I had that much less muscle mass. The tax on my nervous system was less, and of course, I was used to that level of physical output.
Yeah.
So training wasn't as much of a problem. Whereas now, if I was to try and do a day's work and then train to the level that I train now, I don't think my nervous system would be able to cope with it.
No.
But at the time, the taxation on my body wasn't anywhere near as much. So
yeah,
at the time,
sure.
I don't think it was that much of a problem. But yeah, it hindered either my training or my work. So you couldn't bust your ass all day at work and then go to the gym and then expect to perform optimally. There's just no way. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the thing, you know, in this day and age, and especially in like the natural bodybuilding scene, you're gonna find very few people that can just purely live, eat, and breathe the sport and do nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, you'll see videos of Jay Cutler, who literally all he'd do would be eat, go back to bed, eat, go back to bed, train, go back to bed, etc. And you know, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day about why some of these higher level bodybuilders make really good progress when they go out to Kuwait. And essentially the idea is that in Kuwait, everything is done for them. Like, they just get everything, all their meals made for them. They get apparently they get told to go to bed. Like, you have to sleep now, you have to sleep now. And they take all the pressures off, all their lifestyle, external pressures. So when you see like a really good high-level natural bodybuilder, I think that's sometimes even more impressive, because you know that their lifestyle sometimes doesn't just totally coincide with the goal of maximum muscle mass and extremely low body fat levels. So awesome. So you got into training at a very similar age as me, at 15 years old, and I'm interested to know what that sort of looked like. Like, what was your initial weight training experiences? How did you get into the gym environment, and would you say that you started off on a good foot, or would you say that you could have done a lot of things differently when you were 15?
I could definitely do a lot of things differently, and I think I would have done it given the opportunity and the chance. But what got me into the gym was it's just something I always wanted to do. Like, before I was old enough to even join a gym, before I was born, my father was into the gym and he used to train. He used to be he wasn't a bodybuilder. He never competed or anything like that, but he just used to like going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, training really, really heavy on big basic movements. And then he used to go on and live his life and eat shitloads of food and even drink and stuff like that and live his life. And that was, you know, he used to tell me the stories from in the gym, and his uncle and a few other people of his age that I know used to go to the gym, and they used to bounce stories off each other. And hearing that, like, when you're young, it has a effect on you, because you think, oh, that sounds brilliant, and they're all having a laugh, and I want that when I'm old enough to go to the gym. And my dad first took me to the gym when I was a baby. Like, took me through there was a hole in the wall to get in the gym, apparently, I can't remember it, but yeah, he took me in the gym, so I would have been probably 2, something like that. But he took me in the gym to train when I was about 12 or 13. That was probably like a one-off session. He never really, ever since I was born, he never trained. So he'd since given up when I was born to pursue his family life and just concentrate on working and building a home for his family. So, but yeah, I always wanted to do it. I joined the gym when I was 15 years old, before I should have done. Legally, like, I don't think I should have been in there, but I was in there training. And
were you playing any sports at that point at all as well? Were you sporty at school?
No. At school, I wasn't. Yeah, I was sporty, but I wasn't sporty when I left school. When I was growing up, I was very into football. I was quite good at football. I played for Norwich City schoolboys for a short period. And then once I got to sort of maybe 11 or 12, I discovered girls, and all I was interested in was socialising with my friends and chasing after particular girls or whatever, with not great success. But yeah, that was where my interests lie. And then I sort of fell in as I was growing up as a teenager. I fell in with the wrong crowd and getting into the wrong things, and
Sure.
just being an idiot, really. But obviously, once I got to the age of 15, there was a point where I got sat down with some police bigwig, said, "Boy, any more trouble and you're not going to be going in the right direction in life." And obviously I had aspirations. I wanted to get into motor engineering. I wanted to do an engineering apprenticeship at Lotus Cars. That never happened, but I knew that if I had a criminal record, there was no way I was going to get that. So, and I came from a good family. There was no reason for me to be acting the way I was. I was just an idiot. Had my own issues that I dealt with, and while it's embarrassing to look back on and talk about, I'm actually proud of the fact that I moved on from that. And training, being in the gym and bodybuilding definitely took me away from all that and gave me something new to put my energy into, something positive to work towards. And that's why I'm so passionate about it now, especially when I see youngsters and stuff getting into it. I just think it's a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah, agreed. I think, I was very much in the same situation where I sort of got involved with potentially the wrong crowd and led down the wrong route. And I think weight training just gave me a focus where I could just spend my time there and enjoy myself. And that was the main thing that I got into training for, was the enjoyment factor. And I think, nowadays, and I'm sure that we'll move on to sort of how you got into competing, etc. But I think nowadays people are sort of skipping the gun a little bit with regards to how they get into the training element of the gym, and they sort of see a competitor first online, and then they're like, I want to be a competitor, so I've got to start training, as opposed to, I really like the idea of training with weights, let's go and train with weights. Because I think that, the most passionate people that I've seen are the people that have built that weight training passion, either from being just a sporty, competitive person, or just like you, just really liking the idea of lifting heavy stuff and being motivated by, obviously, your father. And I think a lot of people should spend more time just gaining that passion that naturally, as opposed to forcing it.
It's almost like they become attracted by the end result rather than the process. Yeah. And you've said that numerous times before, and people will say it again and again. To be good at something, you have to really enjoy it, and that'll show when the day comes. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to be pushing yourself through the really horrible times when you feel like shit, everything's against you, your relationships are under a strain, or you're not gonna put yourself through that. You're going to take the easy way out and not do those extra reps, or not get to the gym with enough time to do your session or whatever. Maybe.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. So I'm pretty confident, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty confident your first show was 06. Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Boom. Got that right. So when you, how did that come about? So how did you find out about the BNBF, and how did you plan your approach for this first competitive outing?
I first came into contact with a natural bodybuilder, a competitive natural bodybuilder in Norwich. I didn't even know existed.
Okay.
I'd previously been reading magazines and stuff, and I'd been following the BNBF through the Beef magazine, or on their website at the time. Websites were a bigger thing then.
Okay. Was Facebook big or anything like that? No.
I don't remember it. I wasn't on Facebook until about 2007. So
okay.
I wasn't with the times. But I used to follow BNBF, and I used to watch the contest results, and you'd see the pictures, and you'd know who the winners were, and you'd follow who they were. So sort of 2004 onwards, I was following that quite closely.
Okay.
And then I met this guy. I went to a gym in Norwich. He was selling bodybuilding clothing in this gym, and the guy who owned the gym was a natural bodybuilder, competed with the AMB years ago.
Oh, okay.
And his name was Steve Thompson. And I don't think I even really saw him again after that. I just saw him, and he had these pictures on the wall. And he said, you should compete. And I thought, what? You're joking. I was like 19 or 20 or something. I was like, no way. And he said, you could do it. For your age group, you look quite good. You could do it. I'm like, no, you're all right. I don't always stand up there in a pair of pants. What the hell do I want to do that for? No way. But then the seed of thought was planted. And then over a period of time, I started to entertain the idea more and more. And then I obviously decided in about 2005, I'm guessing late 2005, I was going to compete the next year. And then when it came to about, I don't know, 16 weeks out, 12 weeks out, whatever it was from that first show, I decided that I was going to do it. And I remember in the February of 2006, I was training in the gym, and a guy came in, baseball cap on, big arms. I could tell. I just thought there was a lot of big guys in the gym at the time. You could tell this was quality muscle. This was someone that obviously took their training pretty seriously. And Norwich is a small place, and I knew most of the people at the time. He wasn't from Norwich. I could tell that straight away because I didn't know him. And he kept himself to himself. And I see him doing hanging leg raises, and he's got a really good form, sort of in good coordination. He's obviously been training a long time, and I carried on training. Every now and again, glancing over at this guy. And then I think he was doing dumbbell rows or something, and it was a hot day, and he took his baseball cap off, bald head, black guy. And I thought, I know that guy. Where the fuck do I know that guy from? And then it clicked. That's Rob Hope. I've seen him in magazines. He's like,
wow.
Anyone that knows who Rob Hope is know that he's one of, if not the best natural bodybuilder that's ever lived. And that's not bias because he's British, but he just happened to walk into my gym. So I got to know Rob over a period of time.
Wow.
He was actually working at Lotus Cars, which is not too far outside of Norwich. So doing engineering, funnily enough, which is weird because that's what I wanted to do. So, he eventually he moved back to London because his contract had ended.
Okay.
But I kept in contact with him, and he would give me little bits of advice. Meanwhile, for the first show, there was a guy who used to compete in the NABA Universe years ago. He won the NABA Universe, and he was helping me with my diet for this show because I was clueless. So he'd tell me what to do, and I'd do it to the letter.
Sure.
And looking back, heart of gold, nice as the guy is, the advice wasn't brilliant. So
what was it like?
It was like 100 grams of boiled chicken each meal. I can't remember how many times a day it was, but it was that. And I remember just at one point there was like 4 rice cakes. That was it. That was all my carbs in one day. Yeah. There was no veg. It was just chicken and rice cakes, and that was it. And then at the lowest point, I think it was like 850 calories. But
what?
When you look, when you look at my first show, I wasn't on that lower calories. It was between that show and the Britain when it was like really, really low. But the first show, I didn't look too bad by today's standards. You would think, oh no, he's well smooth sort of thing. But I actually competed in the novices before the juniors because the juniors used to be under 21 years old, and I was 21, so I was actually too old for the juniors that year. So novices it was for me, and I did the central qualifier in St Albans.
Yeah.
And I came second to a big black guy called Togoliano. Big pecs, big arms, big shoulders, fairly big legs, but not that separated. So I came second to him, so qualified for the Britain, which is not something I contemplated at all. And I was like, you have that big crescendo, and then all of a sudden, I've got to carry on going. I hadn't planned for this at all. And the guy who was helping me, right, you need to be harder. So we're carrying on dieting, and he's just systematically reducing my food more and more and more. And my body's shutting down more and more and more. And I'm training harder and harder and harder, absolutely killing myself. And I actually did manage to improve my leg mass slightly.
Wow.
But so to do that on such low food just shows you how early on in my training career it was, because to do that you do need to, really kill yourself. But I went to the Britain, and needless to say, people that I had beaten in the qualifier beat me at the Britain because I was that much softer, despite all my efforts.
So did you enjoy that process? Like, did you really, really like the bodybuilding, or were you sucked in by that, or not?
Nah. I loved the challenge, and I loved, competing was a buzz and stuff like that. And obviously I'd done better than I thought I was going to do. I'd got to the Britain, and it was all a very nice experience meeting everyone. But that existence was fucking horrible. There were times like, I just remember thinking, I don't know if I can go on.
Can't do another day of
don't know if I
this.
could go on. There was times where I felt like I was going to pass out. Bearing in mind I was working on building sites and hauling like heavy like storage heated bricks up and down like a 5-story building and stuff like that all day. It was just ridiculous. Amazing how I got through it, really. But now looking back, anything else is just easy. So
Yeah.
I knew, like, looking back at the end of it, and I remember looking up at people that were placing, top 3 in weight classes and stuff like that, and winners of classes. And I remember Shane Raymond winning. Oh no, that was 2007. Alan Davies, I think, a Welsh guy, won it in 2006.
Okay.
I remember sitting with him after the after show party and speaking to various people and looking up at these people and thinking, I have just killed myself, done everything in my power to be as good as I can possibly be, and I'm still miles away from where I need to be. These guys are either using something, they're in on a dirty secret that I don't know about, or they know something that I don't. Now, I was still reading loads and reading things from John Hodgson and CMP articles and speaking to top natural bodybuilders. Obviously, I was still in contact with Rob.
Were there any forums at this time that you were reading? Because I know that forums used to be quite big.
Yeah, there was the BMBF forum, so there was little snippets on there that I was reading, as well as like a natural muscle forum and stuff like that. I think it was called the John Harris forum at the time. So I was learning more and more about what I should be doing, and then it was just a leap of faith basically to try these things, because none of it made sense. Up until that point, it was reduce everything, you get leaner, whereas this was kind of the other way. You how can you possibly be leaner when you're eating more? That doesn't make logical sense, but of course that's not how the body works. When you understand how the body works, sometimes doing things that aren't the most logical actually end up being the best thing you can do.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really cool with the forums and everything, because I've been told in the past, like, there's still some gold left in the old forums that you can still access on, like, things like Intense Muscle and Natural Muscle and things like that, where people essentially brought things really, really down to the basics, and some of the threads on there still apply so much value to today's society. And unfortunately, like, there's so much contruding information at the moment that I think when there's not, like, I think the really cool thing with forums is that when you had a thread going, it would just be a thread that would be started by someone that would have generally either a question, or they were educated enough to start a thread with a solid topic. Whereas now, like, everyone's got their own voice, and so, because there's so many voices and so many uneducated voices that will agree with the uneducated giant voice, it's like there's a load of stuff that just spreads that in reality is crap, right?
To be honest with you, it was a similar sort of thing with forums.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. You'd still get bad information, or you'd get some an element of truth in something, but the rest of it might be slightly off. So in the same way, you sort of have to look for the common denominators and then go, okay, this person's successful, what are they doing that these other people aren't? Yeah. And then after a while, you look at so many successful people and you'll see the common denominator every time. It's always the thing that works. And I think I would definitely, it's a fact, I would definitely rather be coming through now and educating myself now than I would have done then. Definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot more good stuff out there for sure. So, like, from your first season to your second season, I'm pretty sure that looking, like, through your past photos and knowing you as an athlete, I'm pretty sure that you were then a junior in the next year. Would I be correct with that?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And because the age bracket had opened up to under 23, I was then 22, and that would have been my last opportunity to compete as a junior. Now,
kind of worked well.
The jump at the time from being a junior to a Mr. class was just, like, phenomenal, and obviously not being confident that you could ever reach that, I thought, well, I'll give this one last go, because originally I only wanted to compete once. I wanted to compete, say, right, I'll have that photo and I can say I did that once, and that was what I did. But then, of course, you get bitten by the bug and it takes a hold of you. But the second year, I thought, well, this is my last opportunity to compete and do well within a class.
Sure.
Otherwise, and not just be laughed off stage. So that's why I did it. And with the help of Rob, bearing in mind
he took hold of your prep, did he?
no, not at all. I still did it myself, but
Okay.
I'd call him up every Sunday and ask him questions. Through the week, I would just write things down,
Okay.
questions that I had. And Rob's one of these people that he's not a great teacher in the sense he wouldn't volunteer up information and tell you everything you need to know, but you just need to ask him the right questions. So you can extract it from him, but he's not the sort of person to preach and tell you exactly what you've got to do.
Sure.
So he saw me at the qualifier in 2007 at the Central. I did it as a junior.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, I'm shocked at like how much you've come on. Like you're like doing really well.
It was a crazy difference.
Yeah, that was when he said, ring me up, like ring me up, because he's Rob Hope. I'm not going to just keep ringing him up for no reason. You know what I mean? But when he said, just ring me up on the weekend or whatever, I'll help you. I'll answer your questions. I was like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I'd ring him up every Sunday, and he'd stop whatever he was doing. Bless him. He could be out on his motorbike somewhere, and I just pictured him like pulled up in a lay-by somewhere, just like speaking to this young idiot on the phone about bodybuilding.
Amazing.
But yeah. But they were little gems of information, and just gave me the confidence that I needed just to have him confirm some of the things that I was thinking in my own mind and build on my knowledge. As it transpired, I ended up coming in really, really shredded. I don't think I've ever seen a junior that shredded.
No way. No, I'd agree.
But I was also the most stringy man on the planet. I was so stringy, it was unreal. The concept of keeping full was not in my mind at all.
But you were so diced, like unreal diced on that.
I was pretty lean, yeah, but the quality of the photos that I have aren't that great. So
I mean, I'll if I can potentially put some on the background. If you're watching on YouTube, I might try and put some of the photos that we're talking about in the background of this podcast. But they look, what tan were you using at that point? Because they look almost like grainy looking, these photos, but it kind of makes them look kind of cool.
Yeah, that was before like you had or before I knew how to anyway, to put effects on things. I think what it is, the photos that I've got, I've probably uploaded onto something and then tried moving them from one thing to another, and then the quality's been messed up. But it was Dream Tan back then, but
looked like it was.
Yeah, since then, like people have been a bit irresponsible with Dream Tan, ruining venues, and the venues fine the BMBF, and obviously the more money you get fined, the less money you've got for drug testing and sending people abroad. And why should people miss out on their opportunity to compete abroad just because some people can't keep their hands or their arms off upholstered chairs or whatever? Just mindful. A little bit of mindfulness would have gone a long way, but it's not that much of a big thing now that we're all used to different tans and stuff.
No, yeah, to be fair, like on the topic of tans, like I find that I've used both. I used Dream Tan with when I did the UK DFBA show, and I actually found it like really difficult to use. I just found like, putting on clothes and things like that, it would like just immediately rub off. I prefer like I think the product that me and you both use is Dark As, and that you can put a coat on or a couple of coats on the night before, a top up in the morning, and you're just done, and that's it, and you don't really have to worry about it. Whereas with Dream Tan, it's like it's almost so watery, you worry about the whole thing just coming off you. But yeah, so like coming into that junior year, that 2007 year of competing, like what massively changed with the diet? Like did you have a better knowledge of sort of like coming down with the calories slower? Did you start at a better starting point? Because the difference between your first show and 2007 was just crazy, like ridiculously crazy. Like, so what changed?
I would say everything was better. So training knowledge was better, more time in the gym obviously to put on more muscle, so you're starting with more muscle. I never ever believed in getting fat in the first place. I always believed that the leaner you stay, the better the prep is going to be, the higher your food is going to be, etc. And anecdotally, for me at least anyway, that I found that the heavier I got, the worse I felt, the less I was recovering, the worse I was sleeping. My cardiovascular system wasn't as good. And obviously, when you look into the hormonal side of it as well, I think probably hormonally my body was a lot happier and healthier when I was
Slightly
at what I
leaner.
would call a better body fat percentage.
Yeah.
So I think nutrient partitioning is a big thing, and your insulin sensitivity and stuff like that.
Agreed.
Everything's just improved. And people think, oh, you have to eat big to get big. I'm sorry, but I just don't agree with that.
Yeah, no.
At least for me anyway. If they do that and they find it works, then brilliant. But for me, it doesn't make sense to me, and nor did it work. So.
For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people still do really sit in the ballpark of wanting to push their body weight up super, super high in the pursuit of gaining potentially more strength and thus potentially more muscle mass. But what they don't realize is that when they do push their body weight that high and they do gain that extra pound or 2 pounds of muscle, in the effort to bring that body weight off, you'll lose that extra 1 or 2 pounds of muscle mass that you so forcibly ate food to gain. And I think potentially what was maybe one of the biggest things that you saw in 2.6 to 2.7 was just obviously you got leaner, which is visible in the photos. You got like disgustingly lean, but you probably held on to a little bit more muscle mass as well in the process. And just because you maybe did you give it a little bit more time? Did you diet for longer? Or
I gave it more time, but I think the biggest thing was having a fuel source there and having more calories overall. You know, the first go around, it was just madness. Like, you're always going to get a substandard product at the end of it, and probably what happened the second year that I competed was probably a truer reflection of what should have happened the first time. Yes. But even looking back at that prep, you know, I laugh at that now because that was just not optimal at all. My carbs were low. You know, they weren't like ridiculously low, but in comparison to what they are nowadays and what I believe to be optimal for me, they were very, very low. But my fats were higher and the protein was present and calories were present, you know.
And that was enough, yeah, for sure. So with your training, Mark, over the years, how has your training evolved? And over recent years, have you, as you've become more of an advanced athlete, have you found something that just, would you say, works and is your approach to training and your philosophy behind training? So yeah, just talk us through how training has evolved.
I don't pretend to know that I know exactly what works best for me, to be honest with you. I've tried a lot of different things. I can iron out what definitely doesn't work. I've got an opinion as to what has happened over the years, and the way I used to train when I first started wouldn't work for me now, although it worked for me then. You know, I tried more like abbreviated, higher intensity, beyond failure type training, slightly higher frequency. I think the frequency element I liked in terms of results, but the high intensity, slightly more abbreviated stuff didn't really. It worked at the time now, but what I found was I'd get to a point where it would stall, and then I found that I was having to add more and add more and add more, and then in the end I found that I was training more like a volume trainer than an abbreviated program, you know, within each session at least anyway.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what I've done. I've done some strength training type programs over the years, different like 5-3-1s, 5x5s. All of them worked to a certain extent, and I think getting stronger is definitely a big part of how successful you're going to be with your training and how much muscle you're going to put on. But I think I treat strength training as like a potentiation phase. You're increasing the potential to work at higher loads
with your hypertrophy work.
Exactly, yeah. So your hypertrophy work is going to be more fruitful than what it would have been if you were 5 kilos lighter on a particular lift or 10 kilos lighter on a particular lift.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, totally agree.
Nowadays, I like I've been following your training and a few other people's training, like, you know, the JP type style, higher frequency, periodization, you know, undulating periodization and stuff like that. All those different training routines make a lot of sense to me, but unfortunately, like with my work, I have to work around shifts, and there's certain days when I just can't train.
Sure.
And sometimes with injuries and stuff like that as well, it just doesn't fit the way my life is at the moment. If I could train any day I wanted and then go, right, I'm supposed to be training legs on this day, I need to be hitting this number, that number, the other number, but I feel like shit because of X, Y, and Z. If I could train any day I wanted, I could just say, right, forget it for today, I'll train tomorrow, and then carry on rolling. That would be optimal. That would be a good thing for me to do. But if that day is the only opportunity I've got to train, I'm going to have a shit session, and then the next day I can't train because I'm at work. So if I don't train for 3 days, which is not what you want to do if you enjoy training, is it? So.
No.
But what I do like doing is I like, similar to Dave K, really. I've done high volume bro type splits for a long time,
Sure.
on and off, over the years. But that's what I enjoy most, what I've found I enjoy most. And at the end of the day, whether I get the best results out of it or not, that's what I enjoy doing. And fundamentally, what I do this for is because I enjoy training. As soon as the enjoyment of training goes, I don't really, I don't see the point. So, why would I do anything else? I just do what I enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. I think like from what I've looked upon in terms of more advanced natural bodybuilders and just bodybuilders in general, or even just trainees in general, is that the more you advance, the more you have to look to auto-regulate things. And because not only because you are advancing as an athlete, but you're advancing in terms of what's going on in your life. Like, take you back to when you were a junior. Yes, you had a job and you had lots of things going on, but to be honest, like you probably had slightly less life stresses than you potentially do or have done as you grow older, when you have a mortgage, when you have a relationship, when you have, an extended family, and when you have, all these things going on that you have to manage. Like, that takes away from recovery capabilities, and it also takes away from your ability to follow like just the most rigid of training programs. So I think the auto-regulation factor, and also the idea that as you do advance, I guess the accrue of niggles and the accrue of, this hurts and this kind of hurts and this doesn't hurt kind of thing. Like, you have to work around so much more, not because you've necessarily trained recklessly, but because that just happens. Like, you push the limits, and your body's sometimes not going to like that. I know for myself, like when I've had a really successful training block, I actually sit down and I say to myself, wow, like I've just had 8 weeks of training, I haven't got hurt. That's a win. And if I come out of several blocks like that, then I just think of my longevity as one of my main tools at the moment.
Definitely.
And would you agree, sort of like looking at a younger individual, would you look back and say that you should really consider longevity as an athlete?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that I do like to stress with people, because age has given me hindsight, and looking back, I wish I knew then what I know now in terms of looking after your body, doing mobility work, stretching more, things like that. Once you start to get a problem, it's harder to address than it is to prevent. If you'd have prevented it in the first place, that's just gold. If you can stay in the gym, that's worth a lot more than pushing a percentile harder. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
And me and Dave K actually had, we share a lot of texts and stuff like that over the years, and we laugh at each other because we're always injured and stuff like that, and we get frustrated and really upset when we're injured or whatever. Usually Dave gets upset about being injured. And I said to him, this is leading into one of the Grand Prix we did, I said to him, look, sometimes when you get to our level, it's no longer about how hard you can push. That's never under question. And nothing's going to disappear overnight because you get 9 reps on something instead of 11 or whatever the case may be. But if you miss 3 sessions on deadlifts because you went for an extra rep, that's going to be worse.
Yeah, for sure.
And staying injury free and training smart is going to be the difference between you winning and losing, not whether or not you train hard enough or put enough effort in, because everyone's going to be putting the effort in, but it depends on who's going to be able to carry on getting those sessions in. And the difference between Dave K in 2014 and the next time he competed, when he made a massive improvement, was he just wasn't injured as much. And he'll tell you, it was always there. It was just, he was a percentage of what he could have been because of injuries. And that's just scary when you think about that, because he's just phenomenal.
It is scary, because you think, it's frustrating when people are held back by injuries, because it's not caused by anything ridiculous. It's just an accumulation of training, and essentially what you're doing to potentially bring a better package is almost taming your work ethic, which is it's so hard as a bodybuilder. You see things like, I have to get that extra rep, or I have to do this extra set. And I've struggled. I think I will continue to struggle when I look at my training, especially in the way that I look at it with a very much a logbooking approach. I do sometimes definitely get obsessed and very intrigued and in depth with the numbers game. And I sometimes have to take a seat back and think, you know what, AJ, this deadlift is just really not here today. Like, it's like that number is not moving well. And if you take 5 kilos off the bar and your lumbar is no longer rounding and you're not in a horrendous position, is that going to really cost you anything in terms of hypertrophy? Like, no. But it would really hurting your low back and ruining next week's squats, deadlifts, and picking dumbbells off the floor for an incline dumbbell press. Yes, that's going to set you back massively. So I think, it's all about thinking long game when you can, and trying to tame tame that work ethic as much as you can. So moving on with yourself and niggles and injuries, I know that you actually had a season which was particularly fraught with an injury, or at least some injuries, and you sort of stepped on stage, I think that time, potentially not thoroughly pleased with the end result. And talk us through that and how you dealt with those injuries, and then obviously how you then sort of built the mindset to come back and then obviously bring a much more improved package.
Every year since 2010, I had an injury in my forearm. And it used to hurt to do front lat spread and different exercises. It held me back a little bit. I remember thinking, once I get rid of this injury, I'll be fine. Sure. I'd also tore my hamstring in 2009. And ever since then, I've always had problems with it.
Okay.
But every single time I've competed has been exactly the same, but worse, or, in a different way.
Yeah.
Always had injuries. So the hamstring, my back, my hips, my arm, whatever it's been. It's always been the same. Like 2012, I remember feeling like the wheels were falling off coming into the Grand Prix. I was deadlifting and I was starting to get pain in my back, and I was seizing up and I couldn't rotate. And I just thought, well, if I can't I'll hammer myself into the ground until the show. The show's like 4 weeks away, or it's imminent anyway.
Sure.
Did the shows, and then going forward from that into my off season, there's no way I was deadlifting, because it was definitely the risk versus benefit wasn't there. So, right, this is a shitty situation that I don't like, but what can I do instead? Right, let's focus on what I can do. So barbell rows, let's get really strong on that. Chins, let's get strong on that. Everything else, let's just get really, really strong on that. And in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, and I do think it's about all injuries. They do teach you something, and you do come back better. Depending on your level of enlightenment, you're probably a lot more clued up at your age than I was. So you probably wouldn't learn as much from an injury. You'd probably just get pissed off about it because you already know. But when you're not disciplined and you just go in hammering away until you get injured, and you're not really mindful of it, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get injured. But 2012, I got that out of the way. Into the off season, couldn't deadlift, got ridiculously strong on barbell rows. So I made, while I wasn't gaining on a deadlift and stuff like that, I was still doing things in that sort of prone position, handling heavy weights. So going into 2014, I definitely put on quite a lot of muscle.
Okay.
That prep, I had a lot of personal problems in my family. I was worried about the welfare of certain people in my family. I wasn't sleeping very well. So because you aren't sleeping very well, of course, your body's not burning calories the same. It's not as conducive to maintaining muscle. So keeping calories up is even more important. to try and keep all the muscle you've got. And it wasn't until about probably 4 or 5 weeks before the Grand Prix of that year that those issues were getting to a manageable level where I was sleeping a bit better and I managed to pull things back a little bit. So competing in the Grand Prix in that year, which was the year you would have competed, probably first seen me,
yes.
I was softer than I would have wanted to have been, but I was still, I still looked good. I got some good photos out of it. I had a good laugh. I think it was the first time me and Dave Kay actually competed together on stage.
Yeah, I believe you did that one, yeah.
Yeah. So while injuries and stuff are rubbish, I still got something out of it. And that's how I managed to improve from one year to the next. And then going into 2016, which was last year, I had injury in my hip. I couldn't squat very well a lot through the off season. I couldn't train legs at all, to be fair, a lot through the off season. Wow. And then as it came around to the time to start getting ready for shows and stuff, I was like, well, okay, let's start dieting for a show. And as I started dieting, my hip started getting better. Coincidental, nothing to do with the diet, obviously, but just coincidental. My injury started getting better. I still couldn't leg press or anything, but I could squat. And as I was getting more and more into the prep, I was squatting more and more and more. And I got to a point where I was squatting like 200 for 7, 3 weeks out from the Grand Prix, and I was absolutely, I was pretty shredded at the time. And I just thought, how is it like? This is just perfect. Like the everything's aligned. Yeah. Just to turn up actually looking decent. Like I could hopefully have some improvements despite all off season thinking, I don't know if we're ever going to compete again. And that's how it's always going to be. I don't know if I'm ever going to compete again because of injuries. And, if I'm not going to be as good or better than last time, what's the point? I've achieved a lot more than I ever thought I was going to do, going from just wanting a photo on my wall just to say I did that once, I never thought I was going to turn pro. I remember looking at the pros thinking, fucking hell, let's just start on another level. That's not ever going to be me, but I can really aspire to that.
Yeah. So, staying on that topic, Mark, did you before you turned pro at any point when you were having people look at you and maybe people like Rob Hope, who obviously must have seen you in person a few times, and other people at shows getting feedback and probably getting feedback from Vicky McCann and people like that. Was there any point where you were like, shit, I've definitely got a shot at this? Or were you always the type of person to be quite held back and not so confident in, well, not so much not confident, but you didn't maybe have the realization that you had the potential to be pro?
Yeah, I never had the realization that I had the potential to be a pro. Never. I remember going into the 2010 year, which was when I did turn pro. That was after a 2-year layoff, and I'll stress that to a lot of your viewers because you cater to the younger trainer that are just getting into it. Having time off when you're young is definitely important, I think, for putting on muscle. You've got to do that. You can't compete every year and expect to keep coming back better. But yeah, going into 2010, I thought my aim was, after being in the juniors, was to be in a weight class and hopefully be in the top 3 at a qualifier. Just, there or thereabouts at a qualifier, maybe even get a Britain invite or that. Yeah, actually, realistically, that was my goal. I wanted to be top 3, at Britain, not a qualifier. And I thought maybe, if I'm lucky, I might win a qualifier. That'd be cool. But if not, not too worried. And obviously, I was planning on doing the St Albans show, which is the one most local to me. That would have been in late July, I'm guessing.
Okay.
As I was prepping, I did a warm-up show nearer where I live in Great Yarmouth. It was a non-tested show, competing against guys that had done the Universe 2 weeks before. So that was usually a show that they would do just for shits and giggles, I suppose, after that.
Okay.
I wasn't eligible for any of the classes other than the Open Men, so I thought, well, I'm probably going to come last now, but I'll just compete anyway. Who cares? It'll get the ring rust off, and I can see how I'm looking and use it as a gauge for the rest of my prep for the Central show. I did that show. I came second, which was amazing, pretty good. I think I was 11 weeks out from the Britain or something. So obviously, I was going to do my qualifier, but not be 100% for it, knowing that hopefully I'm going to be doing the Britain. So I was 11 weeks out from the Britain, and I turned up, and my strong point was my condition. So I thought, well, that's good. And as my prep carried on. It got nearer the Welsh, and I think it was like the deadline for the entry for the Welsh. And I thought, well, I could actually do an early qualifier in semi-good condition. And if it doesn't go my way and I don't get a qualification, I can just do the Central as I planned, and hopefully I'll get a qualification. So I did. I turned up at the Welsh last minute. Everything. I went there on my own. It's 4.5 hour drive from where I live.
Wow.
I drove on the. Was it on the day? No, sorry. It was in the evening before. I drove there last minute. Booked a hotel. Never been there before. Didn't know where the fuck I was going. What I was going to do with food and stuff. Who was putting my tan on? I had none of this. I turned up at the show at 11 a.m. Checked in. Luckily, I was friendly with Rob Waterhouse at the time.
Okay.
I still am.
Yeah.
He tanned me up backstage, and he said, "Oh, you look really good," and that sort of thing. I did the heavyweight class after I weighed in. I was really, really heavy. Never being one to weigh myself that much, but I just remember weighing myself, going, "Holy shit, I'm really heavy. I'm going to be in the heavyweights." So I did the heavyweights. I ended up winning my class, which was a welcome surprise, and then went into the overall, and I ended up winning the overall as well.
Amazing.
So that was a big shock, and I went backstage and I wept. I really wept.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just remember Flick Williams being backstage and just like crying. And I had all these trophies and I couldn't carry them. I had Best Wheels award, the heavyweight one, and then the overall one, and I just couldn't carry them. And I had no one there, no family, no friends other than the friends that I've got through bodybuilding, and nothing like that. You know, I never had friends really come and visit me that much at shows. But I remember just being there, like, I'm just gutted that other people can't see this. It was just me.
Yeah.
You know. And then I went out for food afterwards with Robert Waterhouse and Darren Loxton, a few others.
Awesome.
It was a sweet moment. I hadn't planned on going off my diet at all. I just thought, this is an occasion. It's not going to happen ever again. So I'll go out for a meal. I'm ahead. I've got a qualification. I can go out for a meal. I went to TGI Fridays. That's pretty sweet. But straight back on the diet the day after. But even going into the Britain that year, no expectations of it. It was like, no way, you know, that's not the sort of thing that will happen to me. Obviously, I decided not to do the Central because I already had my qualification, and doing it again, then it's not really going to achieve anything else. I'd got my achievement, so I didn't want to potentially rob someone else of a spot or anything like that. Not for the upheaval and the expense of competing again, when you could just be concentrating on your training, not having taking anything away from you. No late nights, just no upset to your routine, just stay on it. And then going into the Britain, it was just a case of you'd seen all the other winners and stuff like that, but still I thought, well, I'm going to look okay going into the heavyweights. And Shane Raymond was competing in the heavyweights. Wow. Obviously, he's just a genetic phenom compared to me. So there was no expectation there either. And I ended up winning the heavyweight and the overall at the British as well. So that was another moment that there was tears. It seems like I'm always crying, but I'm not really a crying type usually. But
just passionate about it.
Yeah, definitely. Luckily, my family were there to see that one, which was pretty
awesome.
Yeah, and then after that, it was the IFPA Worlds, the Yorton Cup in Washington, and then we had a little holiday afterwards in New York. And I just remember afterwards, all the shows done. We'd moved on to New York, and we were staying in an apartment. Loads of us just piled into this apartment in New York, and there was a rooftop terrace. We went up on the rooftop, and it was nighttime when we got there. And I just remember standing next to Guy, Vicky's other half Guy, and looking out over it, and I just thought, this is incredible. My bodybuilding, my passion, my training, and you know, there's no way I'd have gone to New York for no reason. You know, not as a holiday; it was too expensive, but. For it wasn't on my list of things to do, but there I was stood on a skyscraper looking over New York and the Brooklyn Bridge and stuff, and I just remember thinking, this is the dream. I always wanted to eventually one day be good enough to be taken on a team trip abroad to compete, and there I was, and I'd realised it before I'd even thought it was possible, so that was pretty cool.
Wow.
But I always wanted to aspire to have those stages through being an amateur, you know, fight for the top three in your weight class at the Britain, and then fight for winning your weight class at the Britain, you know, stages, you know, little achievements that you get and just see how far you can get. But I superseded all of that all in one go. And I remember feeling the elation, but also feeling slightly robbed at the same time, because I wanted to be like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
like not really empty, but oh, that's a shame. I can't do that. I can't carry on doing that. Now I'm on this different stage where I'm going to be like the
Small
smallest
fish.
fish, and it's going to be like starting completely again. And that was how I felt. But
Amazing. Well, like, what an amazing story. I think that's awesome. And I think it just shows your passion and shows how important it is to take the time to do these things. And also, it shows that the people out there that think that bodybuilders are some sort of cocky, brash, I'm big and muscular kind of guy. We're not like
no,
Mark. Mark's cried after his shows because he's so passionate about it, and also you've said that you never really thought that you could do it. Like you didn't have that sort of bit of your personality that was cocky enough to think, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be British champ and I think there's some people out there that respond to that really really well, and they like to sort of like put it out there that they're going to be the champ and that they're going to be number one on the day. And I'm personally in and if you ask people that in my sort of little circle that I send pictures to, I'm always very self-analytic of myself and so critical that I don't think I'd ever have the confidence to say that I'm going to do something, like I am going to win. Obviously it's always personally in the back of my mind, like I go to compete to win, but at the same time it's like having the confidence to say that you're certainly going to win is not something that you can really do in bodybuilding, right? Because you
you can't
like
control you can't control what anyone else does. You're not them. They're not you. You haven't got their genetic attributes,
yeah.
and you've not got their situation. So they could have had a breeze of a prep, and you could have had all sorts of hurdles, and the same the other way around. But I just think with hard work, passion, and consistency, if you're passionate about it, you're going to work hard, and if you're consistent about it and smart, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be genetically gifted to go a long way with what you do.
Mm,
Eventually, you will get there. Don't get me wrong. If you've got subpar genetics, you're probably not ever going to be. Realistically, you're not going to be a pro in this country, not
very
via the
tough.
BMBF anyway.
Yeah.
It's very very difficult. People with good genetics. Look at Shane Raymond. He tried for years to get his pro card, but he
Yeah.
got there. He got there in the end.
You had
But
to try hard.
anyone can do it pretty much. If you've got half decent genetics and you've got hard work ethic and you pay attention to every little small detail, you can go a lot further than you think. Definitely.
Yeah, awesome comments there. So, Mark, we're coming up to sort of the hour mark now. I have some questions that some people have asked us, so I will pull them up and we'll roll through them, sort of kind of quick fire.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so first things first, we're talking about genetics. We actually have a question from Nate Williams. So we have one from him, and also Jake actually, funnily, asked the exact same question. So I think they're quite intrigued to this, to the answer. So they both ask, how do you split up your leg training? Like, what does a typical leg session look like? And do you separate your quads and hammies on separate days?
I have done. I've done, like I said before, I've done all sorts of different training programs. I've trained them together. At the moment, I currently train them together. I've done push pull lower splits. I've done bro splits where I've kept them together. I've done bro splits where I've put them on separate days. My favourite so far has to be where I've split them up. For my last prep, I split them up. I paired one workout where I had quads and calves. That enabled me to really knock my pan in on squats and quad emphasis type movements. And then when I did my hamstring day, I put that at the end of back, which I'd also split into two separate days.
Okay,
So one type would be vertical pulling, another one would be like horizontal rowing.
makes a lot of
So I'd
sense.
pair like deadlifts and stuff like that with the vertical, well, horizontal rowing. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So hamstrings would tie in with that. So yeah, basically that's my favourite. So far, I think that's probably the most rewarding for me in terms of lower leg development overall. Push pull legs is probably and higher frequency routines are probably the best in terms of overall gains. But as far as lower body itself, I would say that's probably the best thing for me that I've found so far, and certainly what I enjoy the most.
Cool, awesome. Adam Brooks asked about, and we kind of covered this already. So we'll actually avoid that first part because we've covered that definitely for sure. So second part of his question is, what is your choice of cardio during contest prep diet?
I actually prefer just like steady state walking about. I've never been one to do massive amounts of cardio. I just think if you're training really, really hard and you're doing long sessions and stuff like that, or even your frequency's high, anything that robs your nervous system's recuperative ability between sessions is just going to impact your performance in the gym and therefore the cross-sectional area of your muscles. So yeah, that's my take on it. I like walking. I won't necessarily power walk and pound pavement really, really hard every single time. I might just go for a leisurely walk. There's a nice lake near where I live. I'll just walk around there at my own pace, but that could take
it at all.
Not really, no. Again, with my work and stuff like that, it was a lot of the time to fit cardio in. It was a case of as and when I get the opportunity to do it. Okay. So I could make time and stay up later or get up earlier to do it, but then I'm eating into my sleep and my recuperation. So to me, again, that doesn't make sense.
Cool. Awesome. Alexander Goodrick asks, meal plan or flexible diet?
See, I think it's a little bit of both.
Cool.
I follow a meal plan. I've always been someone that has followed a meal plan. I'm not one for cheat meals and stuff like that when you're on the prep. If your food is at an optimal level, your metabolism, etc., your leptin levels, ghrelin levels, your fullness won't be as negatively impacted. If you can keep that up, you don't need to keep filling up with loads of shit all the time. If you can keep your fullness up, being flat and stuff is going to be unavoidable, but if you can keep as full as possible while you're dieting, you're making inroads with your condition, you're going to be performing better, maintaining more muscle. Flexible dieting, I'm not a fan of the way a lot of flexible dieters just use it as an excuse to see what they can get away with eating. That's not what you should be doing. You should be eating what is going to be optimal for your physicality. So what is going to benefit your body the most. Now, some people will criticize that with, and I also recognize that mentally different people are going to have a different optimal approach. Some people aren't going to be able to sustain the way I eat. They might, the wheels will fall off, they'll go off their diet and they'll binge and all that sort of thing. So maybe more of a flexible dieting approach for someone like that is going to be more optimal in the end, because they're going to have more adherence. But if you could remove all the mental element and just look at the physical side of it, what's going to benefit your body nutritionally the most is what you should be doing.
Yeah. I'd heavily argue if you're a pro bodybuilder, you can probably adhere to anything. And you, or at least you can adhere to a lot more than a general population client can adhere to, in terms of rigidity of the diet.
Maybe, but then some people are more genetically gifted than others. If you're more genetically gifted and you've got the potential to be, or your potential to be a professional bodybuilder is higher, so you could get there earlier, so you could get there despite what you're doing rather than purely because of it. Yeah,
likely to be more lax.
So you could still be one of the people that falls off your diet, and I know pros that do that.
Interesting. Wow.
And so they might benefit more from a more flexible approach. Even though I follow a meal plan, I do rotate things in and out to cover more variation, not just for my own sanity, but from a nutritional point of view. You get a wider spectrum of micronutrients, etc.
Yes.
And you can cover that. So
yeah, I think
take things in and out.
Yeah, we discussed it on podcasts before with the idea of, I think, the food focus element of dieting is slightly reduced when you just have quite a standard structure. So you know what you're eating for breakfast, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, etc. So instead of coming home and thinking, how much ice cream can I fit into my diet, or how much this can I fit in, or shall I make this new creation and post it onto Instagram? You're focusing more on being a bodybuilder than being a professional Instagram foodie. I think that's a better approach as a bodybuilder, in my opinion. At least it works better for me. Like we said, I think it comes a lot down to individualized preferences and just what you can handle. But I think again, success really does speak a lot. And if you look at quite a lot of the top tier athletes, like a lot of them are very structured in their eating patterns, right?
Yeah, I used to be very militant in my attitude towards it. I was like,
okay,
flexible dieting, that's fucking stupid and that. But then when you watch YouTube and different things, and you're looking at coaches who deal with people who have different mindsets and different mental wiring, if you like, that enlightens you then that, oh yeah, I actually see the place for it now, and you get to see the spectrum of people. There aren't people that are just trying to fit as much shit into their macros as possible, and then there aren't the two extremes. There are people in between. So there'll be people like yourself. You could argue, I don't know, let's say you have like your chocolate on your oats. You could say, well, you could use that having something else that's more micronutrient dense, but it might give you a mental. It's better for adherence, and you might enjoy the process that much more. So in the end, you'll be a better product of all your hard work. Sure. Whereas if you didn't do that, you could go off. You'd be miserable, and that could then have a knock-on effect to your physique.
Absolutely, and I think it's the things like that really do make a diet it's slightly more enjoyable, and then the process for you as an athlete just more sustainable. And I'm certainly of the type that loves structure, and I've tried to be very flexible in the past, like very, very flexible. And that doesn't work for me. I just don't like it. I like whole foods, and I like being satiated. So like all of my meals are like very much bro foods. And then you're very correct that I do have my dark chocolate, and that's like my go-to for the thing that just makes me feel like I'm having something that's a little bit different that you wouldn't normally see in a bodybuilding diet. And I think again, like that's actually brought me a wider audience, because people are intrigued, like, how is this bodybuilder that's is in relatively good condition, how is he still having chocolate on his oats? Like, it's interesting for them, because they're usually used to seeing like just the rigidity of peanut butter or something like that, or a fat sauce that's just like a bodybuilding fat sauce. It's interesting, but it's super cool, like, Mark, to hear you say that you've sort of been enlightened a little bit by looking at people online and coaches, and I'm sure that you've potentially bumped into people like Team 3DMJ and Lane Norton and things like that over the past, and sort of it's interesting to see that. It's nice to see that, because obviously there's people out there that it works for, and that's fair enough, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, whatever works for you.
Cool, awesome. Well, we will round things up there, not to keep the listener for too long. I mean, I could have asked you, I think, a million more questions. And
we were actually going to talk about the judging aspects and some of the things that people perhaps don't think about and stuff like that, but we don't want to make it too long.
we will certainly come back. I think we should do a round 2 at some point, Mark, and I'm sure the listeners will love to hear from you again. We'll be back in the future, and we'll potentially go into and Mark. People who know Mark will know Danny. We've had chats about potentially getting Mark and Danny on for like a joint podcast to discuss how sort of you battle the idea of both competing at the same time and all of that.
We could go head to head.
Yeah, because. But yeah, Mark, for today, it's been a pleasure having you on. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with? But apart from that, make sure that you sort of tell them where to go with regards to following you a little bit more if they want to follow your journey and anything that you share online.
No, the final message really would just be to just hammer home the concept of just enjoy things, work hard. There's no magic secret to anything. Just enjoy what you're doing. Listen to common sense a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Speak to judges, speak to pros, speak to people who have done it before, and listen to what they say. Don't just disregard it and then carry on thinking what you want to think because it's the easier option. Accept home truths, stuff like that. Even if you don't want to hear it, sometimes it's the best thing for you. I'm not really that active on social media and stuff. I'm sure I'll probably do more in years to come as I get more and more comfortable with it. But you're welcome to follow me on Facebook, just Mark Claxton, Instagram, Mark Claxton, DFAC Pro. shout out to my sponsors because I can't do anything without them. I don't really do a lot for them, so I'll use this as an opportunity to say I'm sponsored by Muscle Form Performance Nutrition.
Awesome.
They do brilliant products and all the rest of it, so go check them out.
Cool. Amazing. Well, yeah, like I said at the start of the podcast, it's been an honour to have you on, Mark. I think you're an awesome athlete, and I very much look forward to following your progress moving forward and whenever you next get back on stage. So for the listener, thank you very much for listening to the episode. Make sure to sort of like and comment with any questions or queries that you do have for me or Mark in the comment section below, and subscribe for future episodes, and we will chat soon. Cheers, Mark.
Thanks a lot, AJ. Take care, mate.